Despite its fairy tale origins, Disney's live-action Snow White remake became a lightning rod for controversy well before its release. Announced as a reimagining of the 1937 animated classic, the project stars Rachel Zegler of West Side Story fame as the Princess Snow White, and Gal Gadot as the Evil Queen. From the outset, Disney touted updates to the story to reflect the times that we're in, balancing a respect for the original's DNA with a modern spin. However, those updates, along with Zegler's casting and comments, sparked intense debate, with passionate reactions ranging from praise and support to outrage and calls for a boycott. What began as Disney's $250 million bid, with some recent reports saying it was closer to $350 million, to refresh a beloved classic, quickly turned into a culture war flashpoint. But does all of the blame, hate, and negativity deserve to be directed all towards the star, Rachel Zegler? The answer is simple: no. Honestly, I've spent a few weeks going back and forth on if I should even make this video. There has been so much discussion over the last couple years, and especially recently, on the topic of Snow White's box office failure and Rachel Zegler's connection to that, with the majority of it being extremely negative and, honestly, bullying. While she has made some comments that she could have kept to herself instead of in a public forum, those truly don't deserve the pure toxicity that's being lobbied her way. To be transparent, I knew Rachel for a brief period of time before her career exploded. When she started performing in her high school shows, my friend told my wife and I about this extremely talented freshman that was getting the lead in that year's musical Beauty and the Beast. By her senior year, Rachel was casted in West Side Story by Steven Spielberg, and her career went from there. While it was only in an acquaintance basis, I wanted to get that out of the way, especially when it comes to my opinion on the situation we are going to get into. This story has been covered to death over the last few weeks by every media outlet and sensational YouTuber, but let's start where it all began. In 2018, the then 16-year-old Zegler responded to an open casting call for Steven Spielberg's adaptation of West Side Story. After going through over 30,000 applicants...
To this day, I mean, 1 out of 30,000, you say, what are the odds? And you're like, 1 out of 30,000.
She would win the role of Maria and make her screen debut when the film premiered in December of 2021. She would go on to win a Golden Globe for her performance and receive a Critics' Choice Movie Award nomination for Best Young Performer. One of the earliest controversies was when Rachel was not invited to attend the Academy Awards in 2022, even though West Side Story was nominated for 7 awards, including Best Picture. After some media attention, Zegler was eventually invited to be a presenter for that year's show.
People were upset.
People were upset, and I was not expecting it. So, I mean, it's very wonderful to be here. I'm really thankful to the Academy for asking me to present, and everyone at Snow White who was able to just let me get on a plane. Yeah.
At the same time, filming had just started on Snow White over in London. In 2021, Disney cast Rachel, then a 20-year-old of Colombian and Polish descent, as Snow White. This made Rachel the first Latina actress to play the famed princess. This is when people started coming out on social media complaining that she did not fit their image of Snow White, referencing the original grim fairy tale describing Snow White's skin as white as snow.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced, it was a huge thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Detractors argued that Disney was prioritizing wokeness over loyalty to the original character appearance. Back in 2019, Halle Bailey was cast as Ariel in Disney's Little Mermaid live-action remake and received similar backlash since the original animated character has red hair, pale skin, and blue eyes. However, when the film eventually came out in 2023, it grossed over $500 million worldwide, and the perceived controversy faded away. What makes Snow White any different then? Most people will refer to Rachel's interview at the D23 Expo in September of 2022 and the comments that she made there.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
While her comments on the original animated film upset some people, you have to take a look at all of the recent live-action Disney princess remakes and see this talking point comes up with most of them, starting even 10 years ago with the Cinderella remake.
We wanted to make her stronger, less passive. I guess the main difference is the relationship with the prince, that she's not waiting for a prince to save her, that she's so strong and armed with such courage and kindness, they become sort of superpowers. And then you see two people meet and fall in love and save each other, really.
I think for me, the biggest thing about watching Belle for the first time compared to other Disney heroines was that she wasn't waiting to be saved. There was no saving to be done, you know. She wanted to see the world, she wanted to travel. You know, she had no interest in marrying the guy who wanted to save her. No interest.
No, he's the worst, too.
I remember seeing it and it was like, oh my God, I just like knew something was different, and I felt that it was different, and I think that's why I loved it so much.
I think there were some changes that needed to be made, and I think Disney just did a great job of making those plot changes work and making them feel fresh. You know, she wants to be the leader. You know, her objective at the beginning of the movie is, I want to lead. It's not, I want to marry, I want to, like, you know, as great as those things are. And I think that that's really important, that we're seeing those Disney heroines drive their own narrative forward.
I think audiences can expect to just fall in love with the movie all over again. We love and know this movie by heart, and getting to see the original story, but also with some little twists and turns are exciting, so I hope people really enjoy it.
The quote about not being saved by the prince has been attributed to Zegler this entire time, but it was actually Gal Gadot who said it in this case.
That is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not.
She spoke to growing up with the original film and it not being one of her favorites.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again.
The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first ever full-length animated film, and it definitely changed the medium forever. It is arguably one of the most important films in Disney's catalog based on its innovation alone. However, innovation and history aside, it is okay to not like a film even if you're starring in the live-action remake of it. If comments were made saying how the original film was her favorite, but that wasn't true, I feel the comments would be made towards her being disingenuous on her true feelings. You can't really have it both ways. The original Snow White, as beloved as it is, reflected the 1930s norms, a princess whose goal in life was essentially to find true love and be saved by a prince. Zegler bluntly called out that old plot was weird. She joked about the prince romantically pursuing Snow White after briefly seeing her singing at a well.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Those comments were meant to emphasize the film's fresh take, but the internet reaction was swift and polarized. Detractors accused Zegler of hating the very story that she was hired to star in. They took particular offense at her saying that the prince literally stalks Snow White, framing it as an attack on a cherished childhood memory. Film critic Anna Smith said Zegler pointed out that the times and attitudes have changed, and that the new Snow White has been adapted for the current age. This is the case for many remakes and reboots, many of which do not make the headlines with comments about woke culture. Initial controversies did not end there. In early 2022, before filming was underway, Peter Dinklage publicly criticized Disney for remaking Snow White without rethinking its depiction of dwarves. He said, "You're progressive in one way, but then you're still making that backwards story about 7 dwarves living in a cave together. What the F are you doing, man?" He did applaud Disney for casting Rachel in the role of Snow White, however. The very next day, Disney responded with a statement that they had been consulting with members of the dwarfism community and would be taking a different approach with these 7 characters to avoid reinforcing stereotypes. In between the time when Snow White was initially filmed to when it was released, Rachel would star in a few other major franchises, starting with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. which led to another very honest quote that is brought up a lot in conversations about her.
What made you want to step into this world of DC heroes?
I needed a job. I'm being so serious.
In July of 2023, the actor union SAG-AFTRA would go on strike, with Rachel being a major part of the strike, which was asking for fair residuals from streaming services and the prevention of use of AI within the entertainment industry.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
She did have success both financially and critically with the Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in 2023. She even won Best Action Star at the People's Choice Awards the following year. By 2024, Rachel had been cast in her Broadway debut, Romeo and Juliet, and the promotion of Snow White was about to officially begin. Then on August 12th, 2024, the official trailer for Snow White would be released by Disney. Rachel would post the trailer on X promoting the film, and then following up the initial promotion with "And always remember, Free Palestine." The producer of Snow White, Mark Platt, would fly to New York to try to convince Rachel to take down the post, but it still remains. When Donald Trump was re-elected in November of 2024, she would make a post saying, "May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace." She would post an apology the next day, but this gave some conservative critics more fuel to vilify Zegler personally. It reached a point where the controversy around Snow White was about far more than the movie's content. It became a proxy battleground for grievances about Disney's politics, the actors' politics, and the cultural change in general. Supposedly, a social media guru was hired by Disney to vet Zegler's posts before the release of the film. A supposed fight between Rachel and Gal Gadot was pushed online due to Gadot's pro-Israeli IDF background and Zegler's pro-Palestine posts. However, proof of this battle has not been provided up to this point, other than just differing ideologies. The film would officially be released on March 21st, 2025, with an opening weekend of only $42 million. As of this recording, the film has made $146 million worldwide on a $350 million budget. After the release, the number one question was, how did this happen? Variety would publish an article on March 25th, putting a large part of the blame on Rachel herself. Mark Platt's son, Jonah, would comment on social media when people started making negative comments about his father, confronting Rachel about her posts. He said, "My dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, has to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie." He went on to say that her comments risked all of the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on the movie being successful. However, that's not how box office works. The everyday workers on a film set traditionally do not get a piece of the box office residuals. They get paid up front like any other contract job. Usually only the producers and other above-the-line crew members have any type of stake in a film's success after it's been completed. His comment was eventually deleted. Vanity Fair would take Rachel's side with their article posted on March 28th. Journalist Mark Harris would condemn Variety's story as a hit job and a campaign to put all of the blame on Zegler's shoulders. Most critics praised Zegler's performance as a highlight of the movie, calling her radiant and a shining supernova even in a contentious film. Many journalists and celebrities have come out in support of Rachel, from Pedro Pascal, Melissa Barrera, who was fired from the Scream series for her social media posts, and even Ali Trim, who is currently starring as Glinda in Wicked on Broadway, which is produced by Snow White producer Mark Platt. The film currently sits at a 1.5 rating on IMDb, ranking it lower than some of the worst films ever made. However, Rotten Tomatoes tells a different story, with a 73% audience score. While it is not a groundbreaking film, it is definitely much better than what most people would make you believe, at least not deserving the score on IMDb. Even with all of this conversation going on, Rachel was just recently announced as being cast in the West End production of Evita, starring as Eva Peron. And I think at this point in her career, it is the best move for her. Going back to the thing that started all of it, the theater.
Aphrodite, don't forget me, Romeo and Juliet! Give me Fat Boy's famous hero, you make you that thing called love.
Personally, I am interested to see what career decisions or direction she goes in at this point. It is no question that she is incredibly talented, and even in the face of all this adversity, she has stayed as strong as she can. Controversy is a mirror, not unlike the evil queen's magic mirror, showing us different reflections depending on who gazes into it. Just like in the new film, the fairest one of all does not mean your physical appearance, but how you treat others with your own actions and words. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. As mentioned, it was difficult to decide if I should proceed with this video, but in a sea of negativity, another voice needed to sound out. I took a long time to read every article, watch every interview, and scour through tons of social media discourse to bring a full picture. While I may not have covered every tiny, minute detail, hopefully it gave you another perspective. I also have to give a shout out to Kevin Heimbach for his video on Rachel for being a driving force on showing a more positive side. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell notification to be notified when we post more exciting videos. Thank you so much for watching.